when we talk about patriotism. And there are thousands of patriots of every race, every shape, every size, who are very proud veterans. I know in our family, my father, um, my wife's father, all my uncles, her brothers, the list goes on, of folks who served in the military. And it kind of really gets to me sometimes when I see this and I hear this narrative, because I think back on for example, the African American GIs. Now, here are men, when you think of the Tuskegee Airmen and all the other folks that served alongside of all the other heroes that served our country. But these men and women in particular, imagine coming home after serving in Korea, or let's go back to World War II, when the POWs, the German POWs, had better conditions than the black GIs. Or when you look at the GIs that came back home to places like Mississippi and Arkansas, that in uniform were denied an opportunity to have a hamburger at a restaurant that was enjoying freedom because they were overseas fighting for it. That's amazing. And so we just have to reclaim that narrative of patriotism, because it comes in all shapes and forms. The fact that you don't necessarily agree with our deployment in this particular part of the world, does that make you not love your country any less? Because if you look at the definition, it was very, very simple. Your love of your country, and I'm paraphrasing, but who sets up the definitions past that point? Well, what we're going to do before you get to that, Ambezi, we have a guest on the line, and this gentleman is going to give us some additional perspective. Sonny Ezon, and Sonny is a tremendous producer. He produced, for example, a documentary, or an award-winning documentary, on the Filipino soldiers that starred Lou Diamond Phillips, who was doing the narration. And we're going to bring Sonny on to just kind of share some additional perspective for a few minutes about patriotism as it looks from different races that are part of the rich culture of our United States of America. Sonny, you on the air?
I'm on. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir, Sonny. And thank you so much for coming on Straight No Chaser. We appreciate you coming on today and kind of sharing some perspectives on patriotism. And as I told the audience, you have been one of the people that I've known for many years who has been sending that signal loud and clear. Hey, look at these folks over here. Look at this group over there. They're doing some amazing things on behalf of our great country. So talk a little bit about some of those things that you've done, Sonny.
Well, more recently, Mike, I think I may have shared with you that I did a documentary called Chocolate Soldiers from the USA, which dovetails very nicely with what you were just talking about. And my documentary covers the 140,000 African American troops who were sent to London in the build-up to D-Day. And this is where essentially they discovered what it feels like to be an American citizen for the first time, because they enjoyed all the benefits of democracy and freedom and liberty, and they were welcomed not just as allies, but as heroes, as liberators, and they freely socialized with the British society.
Well, let me ask you this question, Sonny. You, if I could just interrupt you for a second. So you're saying that these gentlemen, these soldiers, enjoyed more respect across the pond than they were getting here in the United States?
Oh, indeed. And in fact, so many of them, once they experienced an integrated society firsthand, when they came back, they became leaders in the civil rights movement, because they saw that it could happen, that it did happen. They experienced it. And so they determined, if not in their lifetimes, maybe their children or grandchildren's lifetimes, they were going to make that happen in America, and they did. And that was the storyline, of the throughput of my documentary was back in World War II. You have African-American soldiers treated as second-class citizens. They weren't even given bullets for their guns. Most of the time, they weren't even allowed to carry real guns.
Wow.
And when Eisenhower was running short of bodies during the Battle of the Bulge, he opened up the combat duties to everyone, regardless of color. Up until then, blacks couldn't fight in combat because there was this prevailing racist stereotype that blacks would run at the first sign of a firefight, and of course, the opposite was true. And but in order for them to volunteer for combat, they had to take a pay cut. They had to take a cut in rank. Like if you were a sergeant volunteering to fight alongside your white brethren, you had to be demoted to a private because they didn't want, African Americans commanding white soldiers. So that was, but still they fought. Still they held on because they had it was a principle. It was something they wanted to prove. And when Eisenhower asked for volunteers, there were the 2,222 volunteers right away. And it's a very familiar theme where those that have been marginalized by society here in America have to fight doubly or triply hard just to prove themselves. Mm-hmm. And that's the case with the Filipino soldiers of World War II. 6 years before Pearl Harbor, their status was changed by a racist piece of legislation from nationals, which meant they were like quasi-American citizens, because the Philippines was a commonwealth and was, ceded by Spain in 1899 to the U.S. during the Spanish-American War. But in 1935, there was this new law called the Tidings-McDuffie Act, which essentially reclassified Filipinos as aliens, which meant that they could no longer have any benefits living in the U.S. They were prohibited from marrying outside their race, and they could not vote, they could not own land. And so essentially it made it a very hostile environment to stay here. But they stayed anyway because it's, for them, for many of them, when they started coming in 1906, this is home. This is what they knew is home. But the U.S. is not making it very welcome. And when they tried to register to fight on behalf of the U.S. after Pearl Harbor, they were denied at first because they were not citizens. But then, when Roosevelt saw the numbers, thousands and thousands of Filipinos volunteering, that's when he decided to act, and he changed the Selective Service Act. And essentially, if one fought for the U.S., then you'd be guaranteed automatic citizenship.
Wow.
And that's how but it's a familiar story. It was the same, not the same, but a similar theme with the Japanese Americans. Their parents, who were American citizens, who were unjustly incarcerated, in camps all over the U.S. because they looked like the enemy. I mean, these are American citizens, and the children were born in America. They had to fight, doubly, triply hard because they wanted to prove their loyalty to America. And in fact, the 442nd Battalion, Infantry Battalion, is the most decorated regiment in the U.S. Army in World War II.
Wow.
Wow.
So
So, Sonny, I guess the interesting thing when we're talking about defining what is a patriot. So, in essence, what you're telling me is that in spite of these soldiers having no bullets, poor equipment, even when you go back to the stories of the Tuskegee Airmen and of the other
Yeah,
African American and Filipino soldiers and so forth, and they were talking about the deplorable conditions, the inferior equipment, and just a lot of those things. Yet these soldiers still fought. They still proudly wore the uniforms. And ask me this question, Sonny, from a historical perspective. I know you did a lot of research. When you're facing these types of conditions, did we have a lot of those soldiers deserting?
no, no. In
Wow.
fact, the opposite was true. They wanted to show once and for all, we gotta put an end to all this ignorance. We're gonna put an end to all this hatred. We're gonna do 10 times better than anybody,
Wow.
so that when you talk to the bombers, the Red Tails, the Tuskegee Airmen, and I had the great honor of talking to two of them a couple of years ago,
Sure.
and they were just, this, that was the thing that amazed me, was despite the insults, despite the prejudice, the sense of, we're gonna not go wallow in that, mud.
Sure.
We're gonna rise above it.
Well, that's
And if you talk to the bombers, the white bombers, who were escorted by the red tails,
yes.
they would specifically request a red tail escort,
Wow.
and the red tail escorts never lost a single bomber.
Wow. Amazing. Amazing.
Well, and that gets you right back to that definition of love of country, which was the essence of what patriotism is, and that's
I
why
mean, you can't get any more love than that. That's crazy.
No,
exactly. Well, let me ask you this, Sonny. You are a renowned filmmaker. You have credentials that are just impeccable. Why do you think the definition of patriotism is now on a sliding scale? It appears that if I live in a certain area and I'm wearing a certain type of hat that says something on it and all these other things, that I'm a patriot. But if I have the gall to protest or I have the gall to do something else, then I'm less of an American as you. And of course, before you answer that, Sonny, let me remind our listeners, you can call us at 702-425-7789. That's 702-425-7789. Or chat with us live during the show. And of course, as always, we will put your comments on the air. We will put you on the air. So, Sonny, go ahead and finish your comment.
yeah. Well, I hope this is okay to say.
Oh, please do. We give it straight, no chase.
Okay. Unfortunately, we have someone in the White House right now whose message of negotiations is a black or white thing. There's two types, and you know this, Mike, from having spent time in law enforcement, that you can negotiate so it's a win-win, or you can negotiate there so there's a winner and a loser. Okay. For me, the win-win situation is always best, because everyone comes out of it feeling like they got a little bit of a little piece of what they were fighting for.
Sure.
But the man at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue right now, his method of negotiation is what he's done in business all along, which is, I'm always going to try and negotiate lower, and I always want to be the winner. If you don't agree with me, then, you're a loser. That unfortunately has affected a large number of our population. People who say they want to make America great again, and I'm wondering when was that? When do you think that was?
What does that even mean?
I keep sensing it's like you want to go back to 1950s America? Is that what when it was great? You know, I thought that